So here's the case all glued up, and here's the material that I chose for both the back and the front rails and stiles. This has been milled down to its final dimension of 3/4 of an inch thick, give or take a little bit. So this piece right here is going to be for the bottom and top rails of the back. Now I need two pieces roughly 17.5 inches wide. So I'm not going to get them all by cutting one strip. So I'm going to need to cut two pieces out of this, 1 7/8, which gives me just enough on this one end of the board. I think I'm going to be okay. If not, I'll adjust it a little bit, and if it's a 1/16 or whatever off, it doesn't really matter. I can do whatever I want. I'm not a slave to the plans. So these are going to be the stiles. Now I need two pieces on here, and I know this is 26.5. So I want to cut these about 27 inches. This piece is about 39 inches, and I got plenty here. So I need to cut two strips 1.5 inches off of this. Now this piece right here is going to be for the rails and stiles for the front door. Now again, I know this is 26.5 inches. I want to give myself a little extra, so let's say 27 inches. I'm going to make a mark at 27. And that's where I'm going to cut that. So I'll cross cut that there, and then I'll take two pieces out of this, 1.5 inches wide. On this, I've still got 21.5 inches. So the rails are going to be the same size as this, so I need to cut two pieces, 1 7/8 out of this, which this board is 5 inches thick, so I'm not going to have any 5 inches wide, so I'm not going to have any problem there. So first, cross cut this, and I'm going to cross or rip everything at the same time over at the table saw. So here's all the material I need for my stiles, and here's all the material that I'm going to need for my rails, all ready to go. So I was doing some last minute measurements before I started cutting the rails for the front door and the back panel. I noticed I made a mistake. Not huge, I can recover from it, but there are supposed to be rabbets that go along the back edge here. Those rabbets are fairly important. When I make the back panel, I don't ever want to see any gaps from the inside, and when you inset that panel like that, it prevents you from seeing any gaps if that back panel is not perfect, like I said. So what I need to do is, I thought about this on how to correct this. I'm actually going to cut those over my table saw with the dado stack, and I can still do it. I just have to make sure I don't cut into these at all. Now I measured these all, and they are, I mean, really, really close to 3/4 of an inch all the way around. So I'm going to set up a dado stack on my table saw, make some measurements off of this, double check it, and then cut that rabbet along the back. So I'm over my table saw, and I've got a dado stack in there. It's set at 3/8 of an inch. It's also, the fence is set at 3/8 of an inch from the inside of the blade. I've already made a test cut on this, and I think I'm good to go. The main thing is that you do not want to cut into the top, bottom, or the shelf. I'd rather have a little bit of gap between the two than actually a gap right here or right here that you're going to see from the front. So with all that being said, I just need to run it through and cross my fingers and hope I don't screw this up any more than it is already. All right, so problem solved. Nothing to see here. It came out really well. It's very, very close to these top and bottom supports in the shelf in the back, but that gives me the 3/8 inch, 3/4 inch rabbet I was looking for. So now I'm going to measure this to make sure I'm right on the rails for this piece. I'm getting ready to resaw the panel for both the front door and the back. I did make a mark about where that is the center of the board there. I spent some time, tuned up my bandsaw, made sure this is parallel to the table. My table is parallel, or my fence is parallel to the table, and that's set right at the middle. I'm shooting for a 1/2 inch overall on both the front and the back panel. I don't think I'm going to get there. I'd still be happy with 7/16 of an inch. Either way, it's not that big of a deal, but I'd still rather get it as thick as possible. So all I'm going to do is start my bandsaw up, push this through, making sure I keep this flat to the fence as I push it through, and just go nice and slow. I've got plenty of power on my bandsaw. I've got a nice blade. Hopefully it won't bow, but you just have to push slow, give the gullets enough time to remove the sawdust, and you should be fine. Alright, and there you have it. And I still have to run these through the thickness planer, but I am 9/16 on this way, 9/16 here, so that's nice and even on that board. So I am on this. I am 9/16 and 9/16. So this board came out well. Now I just need to set up the saw for this other board. I don't think I'm going to get the 1/2 inch I need out of this piece mainly, not necessarily the other one, but we'll see what happens. Well, these are the panels for the doors in the back, for the door in the back. I got to get them down to 7/16. This is how the book match was. I can go this way or this way with it. I decided to go this way, mainly because I've got this cool little figure here and here, and I like the way the cathedrals go up. So I do a little bit different when gluing panels together like this. I don't use any clamps. The reason why is I want to keep them as flat as possible. I know my bench here, or my assembly table, is dead nuts flat. So I use that as the reference surface. When you put clamps on there, there's a real good chance you could bend these, cup them, or whatever, and I really don't need to do that. There's nothing holding, there's no structural force that's being applied to these. They're just sitting in a door frame. The glue is going to be plenty strong enough. So again, I've got a nice jointed edge, and I'm just going to put glue on those, just like that. So now I'm just going to take some tape. I've been doing it, I've mentioned this before in some of my other videos. I've been doing it this way for, God, it's got to be 20 years now. And I have never, ever had a panel fail on me yet. This works just fine. I catch a lot of crap about it. I don't know why. I'm not saying this is, again, right way, wrong way. This is just how I do it. You can choose to do it however you want to. But, you know, at least try it once. If it doesn't work for you, then, you know, move on to something else. All right, there we go. So I'm pretty nice and flat. A couple of quick swipes with the card scraper, and that'll be fine. I'm just going to move that over there for now. Now I'm going to work on the ash panel. This one's a lot prettier. I've got these really cool colors down here. One on the one side actually has some nice blue and gray in it, but unfortunately it didn't work well to the other side. So I'm just going to have to do it this way. Yeah, damn it. That'll be hidden on the back. But I like the way this comes in. There's a nice cathedral going up here, and then there's some switch grain that comes back this way. And if I line those up right, it's a really cool look where they're coming in at a V like this, and then they're coming out like this at different places. So that's a real nice look. And I'm going to go with that. So I'm just going to put some glue on here. Now that I've got that done, I'm going to get some water and a rag. I'm going to clean up this excess glue on the top. I'm not going to worry about it underneath because I really don't want to touch these panels. I'm going to let these sit for probably an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours before I even attempt to move them. By that time, they'll be well enough to be able to move around a little bit. I can scrape a little bit of the glue off from underneath and start to get the panels cleaned up. But they won't be fully cured till tomorrow. So I'm getting ready to cut the grooves and the stiles and rails for the panels. I try to make as much of this as the same as possible so I don't have to make multiple setups. This is the way I want the ash panel to be. Now once I've got those, I can just take this piece of chalk and mark where that groove is going on the inside. I'll do the same with the walnut, and then we'll go over to the table saw and cut those grooves out. So what I'm going to do is I've only got one setup. I can cut all the rails the exact same way on this, which is really nice. I've got a 1/2 inch dado stack in here, and I've got a 1/2 inch of that blade exposed, and I've got the blade raised up just enough so I'm taking off these cheeks. I get a nice snug fit that can just be applied with hand pressure, not pounding it in, but not loose. I can pick it up. This probably took me about 15 or 20 tries to get right. I got it in the ballpark, lowered it, made a test cut, raised the blade up a little bit, made another test cut, and I kept going and going and going. What seemed took forever. However, I got it just right. It's a really nice fit. The second thing you want to do is make sure that you have enough of the blade exposed so you go back far enough on this tenon. So when you put this together, that stub tenon goes all the way, if not very, very close, to the bottom of that groove. You don't want to have it go too deep in here because this joint will never close up. And I've got some ash and walnut. You can bring this in, you can take a look at it a little bit closer. It's in there. There's just a little bit of a gap there. You can see that. But again, that's all right. I just want to make sure it doesn't bottom out completely in there. So this will just go in there like that. I've got the case laid back on my assembly table, and I've got a very, very loose fit of this frame, which is the door frame. And if I've done this right, line up that edge, it's going to be longer and wider than the case. It's a little bit better than a 1/16 of an inch. Like I said, I'll be able to shave this off so I get it real nice and even all the way around on that. So let me flip it over. And again, I don't want these frames to fit exactly. After I build the doors in the back, or the door in the back, I want to be able to fit it. So this one is a strong 32nd bigger than this one, which is right where I wanted it. So after I get the doors made, we'll go ahead and fit them to these openings. I'm getting ready to take some measurements so I can cut the back panel that's going to fit in the frame. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the rails and I'm going to put them in here. I should mention this is the exact same process on the front door, so I'm not going to show that. I'm just going to show the back panel. So I'm just going to put that in there and butt that up against here. I'm going to take one of the stiles, or one of the rails anyways, I'm going to put it in here and I'm going to overhang it just a little bit in the back here. Push that into place. I've got just a little bit of an overhang. I'm going to take one once from the other side. I'm going to do the same thing. I just want a little bit of an overhang, maybe a 32nd of an inch. Because remember, I know my cabinet is off by oh, well, let's say 3/32. Or I should say 3/64. So got a little bit of overhang. I'm just going to take a spring clamp, put that into place. Don't want them to move around, which they can. I'm going to get this out of the way. So I've got a steel ruler here. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to put that in the groove, butt it up all the way to the end, and right there I can see we're at 14 3/4. Here I'm going to measure the inside to inside, and we're at 23 1/8. So I know that these grooves are a 1/2 inch. So 23 1/8 plus an inch. So my height is going to be 24 1/8. So I've got my panel here, and I want to keep as much of this cathedral as possible. So I know that I want to cut it. This is definitely not square here. I want to cut it about right here. I want to get as much of that as possible. I'm just going to trim a little bit off the bottom. And I've still got plenty to go up here. I think this is around 27 inches long, 27 1/2. So I'm going to keep as much of this as I can, but this still looks really cool up here. It's probably going to come up to about here. Now, the way I cut this when I resawed it, this was my jointed edge, and this is just a bandsaw edge. So I really have no reference point on this at all, or reference edge to cut this with. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do this off camera. I'm going to take it over to the joiner, and I'm going to get this edge right here nice and true. Then I can take that and take it over to the miter gauge on my table saw and cut that square. I've got my table saw fence set to 14 3/4. Double check that. Yep, we're good. Remember, this is my reference face, or this is my reference face here. So that's what I'm going to put up against my fence. I'm going to rip that, move the fence back to 14 5/8, which is just 1/8 of an inch, and then cut off the other side. Well, I've made those two cuts. I just want to make sure that I'm at 14 5/8, which I am. So I'm good. Next thing I want to do is I just want to cut it to length. And I'm going to use my cross-cut sled for that. Well, I need to cut rabbets all the way around here to fit into the grooves on the rails and the stiles. Now on the back piece, those rabbets are going to be on the show face, so which is the back of the cabinet. Well, the back of the cabinet that you see from the front anyways. So I just want to take some blue chalk and mark exactly where those are going. Now on the front panel, the rabbets are going to be on the inside of the door. So I need to make those here. The reason I'm making these marks is because it's really easy to get confused and make sure you're doing it right. So when this is in here and you're looking from the front, there's going to be a 1/4 inch reveal that goes all the way around the door. When you're looking at this from inside, there's going to be a 1/16 inch gap that goes all the way around. This will be semi-flush with the rails. It'll be a 1/16 of an inch less. So what I need to do is I need to go over the table saw and set up a dado stack with a 1/2 inch reveal. And since this is 7/16, I need to raise that bit up 3/16 of an inch so that fits in the rails and the stiles. So this is the back panel and this is the front panel. This is what you'll see from inside the cabinet. It's a real shame that this is going to be hidden by some chisels. There's these flames coming up like this, and then this coming down like this. It's just gorgeous, and it's going to look really nice when the finish hits it. On the back, you've got a 1/4 inch reveal. Now this is the front. This has a really cool look too. This actually has a flame that goes down towards the center, and then two cathedrals coming up on the side. Again, this is going to be a very, very cool look. We've got a 1/4 inch reveal here, and again, this is almost flush with the back. So Next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to do this off camera, is I'm going to surface prep. I'm going to hit it with a hand plane, a smoothing plane to be specific. Get rid of any machine marks. Hit it with some 320 or 400 grit sandpaper very lightly just to get rid of any fuzzies that may be still there. And then I'm going to pre-finish. The only thing I'm not going to pre-finish are the edges of these, because I still need to do the machining on them so that I can fit this door to the cabinet and fit this back into those rabbets in the back of the cabinet. So the next time you'll see these, we'll actually be working towards the glue up on it.